1909, the Phoenix Gazette ran a cover page story about the Smithsonian Institution discovering caverns in the Grand Canyon that contained Egyptian and Hindu and Buddhist artifacts. Also in these caverns were discovered swords and statues and hundreds of mummies. Why did the people of the Southwest mummify the dead? Was the ancient Southwest part of a vast trading network that went down to Mexico and in fact all over the world? What happened to these people? Why did they abandon these cities? And where did they go? These are some of the questions that we'll explore in this episode of Lost Cities and Ancient Mysteries. The history of Arizona and the American Southwest is as much of a mystery today as it was 100 years ago. These ruins in northern Arizona are called Wupatki. It's near the Grand Canyon. And what we see here is a ball court. This is one of the most northern ball courts in all of the Americas. But ball courts are found in Mexico and Guatemala, as far south as Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And we find ball courts here in northern Arizona, near to the Grand Canyon.
There's a ball court at Wupatki National Monument. It's the farthest north ball court on the North American continent. And the Hopi had a huge trade network with the Maya. So the ball court tradition stretches down, into the Maya territory, thousands of miles away. And there was a big trade network between the Hopi and the Maya. In fact, there have been found many parrots and macaws buried in northern Arizona, which proves that the trade network was very strong around 1100 AD.
Archaeologists wonder about the connections between northern Arizona and central Arizona with Mexico. What contact did they have with the Toltecs, the Aztecs, and the Mayans? Did some of the turquoise and jade and metals that the Aztecs and Mayans and Toltecs used come from the American Southwest? Some of the answers may be found here at Wupatki and other areas near the Grand Canyon. There would seem to be many connections between the ancient Egyptians and the original natives of the American Southwest. For one thing, they both hunted with boomerangs. They also mummified the dead. Many of their religions were similar too, in the sense of sun worshiping and various gods. Many people claim today that there are connections between the Hopis and the Zunis and many Oriental and Egyptian cultures, including Japanese and the ancient Hindus and Buddhists as well.
The Hopi Sipapuni is very close to this reputed site of the lost Egyptian city in the Grand Canyon. A lot of people claim to know where it's at, but it hasn't actually been rediscovered. There is a lot of correspondences between the Egyptians and the Hopi culture. There are a lot of linguistic correspondences. For instance, the word for star is Sohu in the Hopi language, and the word for the Orion constellation is Sahu. So it's virtually identical, those two words.
This Olmec statue out of basalt is extremely unusual. It looks very Egyptian to me. And in fact, notice that he's apparently wearing the false beard that we associate so much with the pharaohs. Other parts of his head, too, seem to be Egyptian-type pharaonic headdress that he's wearing.
Various southwestern Indian traditions place the Sipapu at the place of emergence. Most traditions place it up in the San Luis Valley near the base of the Sacred Mountain of the East, or Blanca Peak we call it today, which is the White Mountain, or it's called the Sacred Black Sash Medicine Belt. And that Sipapu is shared by the Rio Grande offshoots of the Anasazi. The Hopi are different, and they place their place of emergence in the Little Colorado River Gorge, near this sacred salt mound. And I find it very intriguing that this is also the location, the supposed location, where a cavern of probably immense value of Egyptian artifacts was allegedly found and cleaned out by the Smithsonian over a matter of months back in 1909. And then the Smithsonian has denied that they ever were there, or that they had an explorer there. I guess the guy's name was Jordan. So I find it very interesting that there should be a very close, proximity connection between the Hopi's place of emergence and this particular alleged cavern of Egyptian artifacts in the Little Colorado River Gorge.
Really enough, a lot of spiritual elders believe that the Sipapuni, the place of emergence, was somewhere in the Middle East. They're not real sure about exactly where. It might have been Egypt, it might have been Jerusalem, but there are tales that have the Hopi coming from the Middle East to the New World.
These ruins here near the Grand Canyon may have been part of the network of trading citadels and trading centers that had to do with the early Chinese and Egyptian, Hindu, and Buddhist explorers that were coming into the Southwest and going to the Grand Canyon.
There is an artifact that the Hopi used. It's called a manko, and it's very similar to the Wayneman-Dixon relics found in the north shaft of the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. So these two artifacts are virtually identical, and they both resemble the constellation Taurus, the V-shaped, the bull's horns of Taurus.
Is it possible that the area of Wupatki was part of a center for a necropolis in the Grand Canyon that contained hundreds of mummies, as the Gazette article in 1909 claimed? As you drive through the deserts of southern Arizona, you start seeing these billboards for the thing. What is the thing? Well, it turns out that the thing has something to do with our quest for the Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon. Let's find out what it is. This is the thing. The thing is a mummy of a woman and a child. and supposedly it is from the Grand Canyon Flagstaff area of northern Arizona. Is it possible that the thing is one of the mummies taken out of the Egyptian treasure vaults in the Grand Canyon? So now we have seen that the thing is in fact a mummy and a child from the Flagstaff and Grand Canyon area. Is it possible that these artifacts are from the Egyptian caves in the Grand Canyon mentioned in the 1909 Phoenix Gazette article? This is the Little Colorado River Gorge. It was here that the Mormon pioneer Seth Tanner would prospect. He would come up from Cameron in the Navajo Nation area and move up through the Little Colorado River and its gorge, prospecting, looking for gold, panning in the river. As he went farther west, he came to the junction of the Little Colorado River Gorge and the Grand Canyon. There at the junction of the Little Colorado River Gorge and the Grand Canyon are the sacred Hopi salt mines. Today, this area is reserved only for the Hopi Indians, and tourists are not allowed to go into this area. But this is the area that the mysterious Seth Tanner was exploring when he discovered a secret cave of the Hopis. Inside this cave were objects, possibly statues, artifacts, and mummies that the Hopis didn't want anyone to see. But Seth Tanner saw these things inside this secret cavern. Because Seth Tanner had seen what was inside the sacred Hopi caverns, they blinded him and kept him captive in a cave for many years. A photo still exists of Seth Tanner as a blinded old man, but what he saw in those caves has never been divulged and is still a secret today.
The area where this cavern system is said to exist is right before the river. I think the river curves around from the north rim, curves around, and then does a jog back to the south down towards the main body of the canyon. It's in that area that, at least from my research, that's where I would suspect that it would be. And it's very inaccessible. It's extremely hard to get to. There's quite a number of good websites that actually people have taken expeditions and mounted expeditions and gone to this area. It takes several days to get to if you're hiking. But it is towards on the eastern side of the canyon, on the north side of the river.
I think the desolation of the area has prevented any hard finding of this rediscovery of this place, because it is a very dangerous place to go hiking. Experienced hikers have been swept away to their deaths and their bodies never found in this area. So it's a real hard place to be, to find, to make your way around.
The Hopi Indians have a number of prophecies concerning the end of the fourth world, the end of today's world as we know it. One of these prophecies claims that spider webs will run across their land, and we can see that today with the power lines that are running all across the Hopi Indian Reservation and Navajo Indian Reservation here in northeast Arizona.
Two of these cycles have occurred in this current world that we're in. The Maya, similar to the Hopi and other southwestern Indians, have a tradition that we are in the end of a cycle of worlds. According to the Hopi, the world was destroyed by fire, by ice, and we're at the end of the fourth world right now. I think fire, wind, and ice. And this particular world according to the Hopi, is going to be destroyed by the earth shaking. The warrior twins are in the ground right now, holding Palulukang, who is the primordial serpent that keeps the world in balance. And because the people have decided to turn their back on tradition, on ceremony, the warrior twins are going to abdicate responsibility for keeping Palulukang in check, and they're going to let go. He will spasm 4 times, and the earth will flip over 4 times. That is the Hopi version. Now, the Maya have a very similar interpretation of this particular time cycle. And 2 of these calendars have clicked over like this in the last 3,200 years. And whenever this particular conjunction or turning over, clicking over from one cycle to another occurs, there are cataclysmic changes that occur in the world. And so that is where the interpretation that the world is going to end in the pop culture version has come from, because the 2 cycles prior to this, that this has happened, there has been cataclysmic change. So there appears to be a connection between Hopi end of the world, shall we say, or end of cycle myths, and the Mayan end of cycle myths. Martin Gusuisimo, who is the last traditional elder, considered the last traditional Hopi elder, there are some who are not well known, but Martin is the most well known of these traditionals. He has a very interesting folded up Mayan codices, or it's a piece of paper. It's pretty long. It's about 4 or 5 feet long, that has a series of Mayan glyphs on it. It's and what he calls it kind of he says that this Mayan glyph is a pictorialization of the Hopi prophecy. And he sat down on several occasions and explained the progression. And you see that humans at the beginning have roots going out of their backsides into the ground when they're sitting on the ground, or out of their feet into the ground when they're on their feet. And as time progresses, the roots get smaller. And we are now at a time where we actually, not only do we not have roots that tie us to Mother Earth, but we're actually floating above the earth. And we're at the last 2 figures and glyphs on this long strip that he has, where a sergeant at arms is standing behind mankind with a club, and is about ready to clock us on the head with this club and punish us. And he equates this with the return of True White Brother, who has the last missing tablet that the Hopi are waiting to have returned to Hopi land. Now, there's a similar version in the Mayan prophecy of this cycle's ending at this particular time period. And the Hopis have been waiting for the fulfillment of a number of prophecies that have been foretold for 1,000+ years, probably thousands of years. And they are contained on a series of tablets that Grandfather Martin was a custodian of. They're called the Fire Clan Prophecy Tablets. He observed one of the last prophecies being fulfilled in 1989, when during a snowstorm, the sacred purple flower of the Hopi came up through a snowbank and blossomed. And then at the same time, during the same storm, this pear tree bloomed outside of his house. And he took this as fulfillment of this very important prophecy. He immediately went to and called Governor Bruce King of New Mexico and arranged a press conference in Santa Fe for reporters, and brought out the prophecy tablets, and really got in trouble back on the res for doing this. In fact, they stripped him of the tablets eventually. But he warned the world, and he said the War of the Gourd of Ashes, which is the major conflict that's going to occur at the end of this world before True White Brother comes back and lops off a bunch of heads. But this conflict, he warned, was going to start within the year. And interestingly enough, I think 9 or 10 months later was when we invaded or kicked Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait for invading Kuwait. And he said that was the start of this final, conflagration that's going to be the end of this world.
The Hopi Indians originally inhabited all of this area around the Grand Canyon. But about 700 years ago, they abandoned these cities and moved to the 3 Hopi mesas that they occupy today. So we have seen that there really is some kind of a mystery in the Grand Canyon. We've seen that there are ball courts in northern Arizona. We have seen that a man named Seth Tanner was punished for finding a secret, hidden place within the Grand Canyon. We've also seen some of the mummies that have apparently come out of the Grand Canyon. Our quest for lost cities and ancient mysteries continues. The area between the Salt Rivers and the Gila River was once a huge area of the Hohokam Indians, who built cement-lined canals and irrigated the desert for miles all around. They built large, multi-storied buildings out of concrete, and they had ball courts, just like in Mexico, and north at Wupatki ruins near the Grand Canyon. Did the Hohokam people have a trading network that went as far north as the Grand Canyon in Utah and Colorado? Were they part of a worldwide Sun Kingdom network that was centered on ancient Egypt? Can it be that the ruins here at Casa Grande, made out of concrete, have something to do with the Egyptian presence in the Grand Canyon? The most popular game through all of the North and Central America was the ball game, played on ball courts, like this one here at Casa Grande in central Arizona. Ball courts were used by the Mayans and the Toltecs and the Aztecs, and by the Hohokams and other peoples here in Arizona. It was a game similar to soccer and basketball. Down in Mexico, the game was typically played with a rubber ball taken from the rubber plants around the jungles of Central America. These rubber balls were then brought up from Mexico here into central Arizona, along with exotic feathers and other jungle items such as cocoa seeds and crystals, other things like that. Curiously too, here in Arizona, the natives hunted with boomerangs. Even though we think of boomerangs as an Australian Aboriginal weapon, boomerangs were used all over the world. And it's well known that the Egyptians hunted with boomerangs, as did American Indians, and people in Europe hunted with boomerangs as well. Some of the oldest boomerangs that have ever been discovered were found in Poland and in Denmark, as well as in Florida. In the Valley of Kings, near Luxor, Egypt, is something similar to the Grand Canyon. Ancient vaults cut into solid rock, and inside them, the mummies of kings and other important people. Is it possible that what the 1909 Phoenix Gazette story was talking about of Egyptians in the Grand Canyon is something similar to what is found at the Valley of Kings in Luxor in southern Egypt? We saw the megalithic engineering in Egypt and Peru, but here in Arizona, they built their cities out of concrete, much as we would do today. This is the ancient site of Tuzigoot near Cottonwood, Arizona. Like the Hohokam cities, it too is built out of a kind of a concrete or cement. Tuzigoot is built by the Sinagua people, the people without water, a people who we don't know who they were. They disappeared, but we believe that they were related to the Hohokam and also to the Hopis of northern Arizona. One of the reasons that Tuzigoot might have been here is that nearby in Jerome, Arizona, on a mountain, is the ancient mines used by the Aztecs that were then rediscovered in the 1800s and then mined as the modern Jerome copper mines. In fact, the ancient Hopi Trail coming from the Hopi Mesas came down into this area right here to Tuzigoot and to the Blue Mountain where Jerome sits today. So here we have evidence of ancient mining by the Hohokam and of the same kind of building techniques. So it seems possible that the Hohokam had spread far into northern Arizona, bringing their ball courts and other technology such as concrete with them. This is the famous metropolitan center of Teotihuacan, about an hour north of Mexico City. It's famous for its giant pyramid of the sun and giant pyramid of the moon. It also has a pyramid of Quetzalcoatl. No one knows who built this giant pyramid complex. It was thought by the Aztecs to have been built by giants at the beginning of the earth. Today, archaeologists think that possibly this entire area was a huge hydrological work, and all of the plazas around the pyramids were flooded with water. It's possible that Teotihuacan, much like Tiwanaku in Bolivia, was a huge metallurgical area, washing ores out and making iron and copper and other metals for use by the Olmecs and the Toltecs. Behind me is the Pyramid of the Sun here at Teotihuacan. It's the third largest known pyramid in the world after the Great Pyramid at Giza and the Great Pyramid at Cholula, which is also here in Mexico. The pyramid measures 220 meters on each side of the base, and it is currently 70 meters high. It's not really known who built Teotihuacan or really how old it is. Many archaeologists believe that Teotihuacan was built around 100 AD, although there is evidence that these pyramids are much older than that and were built as far away as 1000 or 1500 BC. The Great Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan was actually built over a natural cave. And this cave was in a cloverleaf shape, and some archaeologists believe that a natural spring emanated out of this cave and water flowed out of the Great Pyramid of the Sun and into the streets of Teotihuacan. In this theory, Teotihuacan was a water city, and water was all over the city, and instead of walking between the pyramids, a visitor would have to go from building to building in a boat. One reason why Teotihuacan might have been a giant hydrological works was that this was an ore processing area. Water was diverted into certain areas, ore was washed by the water, and then copper and silver and gold and other metals were extracted from the ore here at Teotihuacan. The pyramids here at Teotihuacan are huge, nearly the size of some of the pyramids in Egypt. However, the pyramids in Egypt are megalithic. They're built out of giant blocks of granite and limestone. Here at Teotihuacan, the pyramids are large, but they're built out of smaller stones. Something a little bit more easy to accomplish, really. This is the Great Pyramid of Cholula. It's the largest structure in all of Mexico. This pyramid was only discovered in 1910 when they were building an insane asylum here. Up until that time, they thought that this giant pyramid was just a hill covered with dirt. In fact, they built a church on top of it. But today we know that the Great Pyramid of Cholula is the largest pyramid in Mexico and the second largest pyramid in the world after the Great Pyramid of Egypt. This pyramid is dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. And in fact, exactly how this pyramid came to be covered completely in dirt to look like a hill is still a mystery. One of the explanations is that this pyramid was so sacred to the ancient Mexicans that when the Spanish invaded, they didn't want this pyramid destroyed, and so in a few weeks they went through tremendous effort to bury the pyramid. We can see from this section of the pyramid where Mexican archaeologists have restored it, we get a good idea of what the pyramid originally looked like when it was being used. And in fact, it not only was gigantically huge, but beautifully spectacular as well. One of the things about the Great Pyramid here of Cholula is that archaeologists say that it was constructed over an ancient spring and that water poured out of the pyramid. This is also what we're theorizing happened with the pyramids at Teotihuacan, that water also was coming out of the pyramid and flooding that ancient city. So follow me as we go deep inside the Great Pyramid of Cholula. Mexican archaeologists have actually cut these tunnels inside of the pyramid so that they could go deep into the core and see if there were any tombs or natural caverns. They wanted to see how the pyramid was constructed. And as we get deeper inside, we'll see many side passages, some going up, some going down, and even we'll find some of the earlier inner layers of the pyramid when it was first constructed. Mankind has never moved as much material and mass as what's over us right now. We're deep inside the Great Pyramid of Cholula, one of the largest edifices ever constructed in the world. We're deep inside the Great Pyramid of Cholula here, and in fact this is a crossroads of the tunnels. One of the tunnels is going deep down inside the pyramid. This is probably to the natural cave where there was originally a spring and water came out of. And this tunnel is going up towards the top. Must be going near to the apex. You can see some of the outer levels of part of the original pyramid that was here before other pyramids were constructed over it. In the early 1940s, University of California archaeologist Matthew Stirling discovered 5 colossal heads made out of basalt at La Venta. The largest of these heads weighs over 24 tons and was taken from a quarry over 100 kilometers away. It's assumed by modern archaeologists that the Olmecs did not know the use of the wheel. Year after year, archaeologists discover new things about the Olmecs, pushing them farther back in time and deeper into the heart of Mexico. Only recently, archaeologists have discovered the oldest writing in the Americas, which is Olmec. Also, they've discovered Olmec remains near Mexico City. Notice here again that how his hands are on his knees. This is known as the Quizuo position. He's wearing an unusual headdress with the ball in front. It's possible that there was a snake here too. This also would have been very Egyptian. His headdress as well is very Egyptian. It's a very fine and well-made statue. We're on the Great Pyramid of the ancient city of Tula, the Toltec capital. These giant statues are called Atlanteans, and they are actually pillars that once held the roof of a great temple dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. Tula is about 60 miles north of Mexico City, and it's one of the farthest north megalithic cities in Mexico. The other Toltec capital was Chichen Itza in the eastern Yucatan. The Toltecs themselves are a mysterious group, arriving sometime around the time of Christ and then taking over much of Mexico from the Yucatan to even this area north of Mexico City. Who were the Toltecs and where did they go? So who were the Toltecs? According to some archaeologists, the Toltecs are the remains of the Phoenicians and Carthaginians. After the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage, and with Rome finally conquering the Carthaginians, salting the earth at Carthage and controlling the Mediterranean, the Toltecs, who were also the Carthaginians and Phoenicians, escaped across the Atlantic and came to their trading bases in the Yucatan and Mexico. Here they created Tula, the new Toltec Phoenician capital north of Mexico City. It's thought from here they also expanded into northern Mexico, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and other areas. We find ball courts here at Tula, just like we do in Arizona. Is it possible that the Toltecs have something to do with the mysteries of the Grand Canyon and some of the mummies and Egyptian artifacts that were discovered there at the turn of the century? This Atlantean statue here at Tula is holding in his right hand kind of an unusual and mysterious artifact. Mainstream archaeologists think it's an atlotl, a spear thrower, but the writer and Sumerian archaeologist Sitchin thinks this was a plasma gun, a kind of a rock melting device for mining. This is the central plaza of Tula, the ancient Toltec capital dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. We can see here the central plaza, and over on that side is one of the Toltec ball courts. It's thought that the ball game, using a rubber ball, originated with the Olmecs in southern Mexico. The Mayas used the ball game, so did the Toltecs. But ball courts like this are found as far north as the Grand Canyon in northern Arizona. We know that the Hohokam Indians and others played the same ball game as the Toltecs. Is it possible that the Toltec civilization expanded as far north as Utah and Colorado, and the ball game being played in all of these areas, just like the Toltecs here north of Mexico City? The founder of Tula was said to have been a light-skinned man with a dark beard, and he founded Tula as a peaceful society. But later, another group took over Tula, and they worshipped a dark god and introduced again human sacrifice that Quetzalcoatl had forbidden. This ruler then departed Tula and went to the east, promising that he would return one day and retake this ancient city. When Cortez landed at Veracruz, he was seemingly fulfilling this ancient Toltec prophecy of the return of their king. Cortez was a light-skinned man with a dark beard, and the Aztecs thought that he was the returning god, Quetzalcoatl. It was the seemingly fulfilling of this prophecy that caused the downfall of the Aztecs and the ascent of the Spanish here in Mexico. This is one of the Toltec ball courts where they played a game that was kind of a cross between soccer and basketball. Behind me here is the mysterious conical pyramid of Cuicuilco. It's thought to be one of the oldest pyramids or structures in the Valley of Mexico. Archaeologists often date this as at least 2,000 years old. However, it is covered partially by a lava flow. And back in the 1920s, geologists speculated that this lava flow was over 8,000 years old. Since the pyramid had to be built before it was covered by a lava flow, this would indicate that this pyramid is not 2,000 years old, but over 8,000 years old. Archaeologists do not know who to ascribe this ancient pyramid to. It's actually so old that it may actually have been built by the Olmecs. Recent excavations here in central Mexico have revealed that the Olmecs were indeed in the area of Mexico City and in the area of Cuicuilco. Is it possible that the ancient Olmecs built this pyramid? The history of Mexico and Central America is as much of an enigma today as it was to archaeologists 100 years ago. Civilizations rose and fell, but modern archaeologists are reluctant to admit the long-distance connections of the Aztecs and the Maya, of the Toltecs and the Olmecs. We've seen the megalithic monuments of the Olmecs, but we don't know who these people were, where they came from, or what happened to them. Yet, our search for lost cities and ancient mysteries will continue.